Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all for taking the time to meet with us today and to get your questions answered about housing, living on campus, and living in the Cambridge community. So I am going to start with my introduction. I'm Jeannie Cadet, and I am the Assistant Director for Admissions, Recruitment, and Persistence. And I will have my colleagues introduce themselves, and we will move forward with introducing our students here. So this is going to be an amazing opportunity for you all to kind of get to know us a little bit more, get to know our students a little bit more, and find out how amazing our program is and the importance of living in a community and being part of a community such as Scholars. And you'll also have ample time to ask any specific questions. I'm pretty sure you have questions very specific to where you have been assigned, and what the whole living experience is like in Scholars. All right. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jess and then Ben.
Hello, everyone. Again, as Jeannie said, my name is Jess Krennick. I use she, her pronouns. I work in the College Park Scholars front office, which means that if you have made a phone call or if you have sent an email to ask CP Scholars, you've probably heard from me. If you have sent an email to ask CP Scholars and I have not replied to you, I'm sorry. Now is my chance to apologize. I have previously before being in central staff, I worked for Art Scholars. So I'm always happy to talk a little bit about what that program is like. But my responsibilities are, I am the administrative coordinator. So I do coordinating for all 12 programs, get to work with all of your directors, all of the students, and help make opportunities for connections. So really glad to be here. I'm going to hand it over to Ben.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Parks. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Associate Director for Student Affairs with the Scholar Central staff, and I work closely with the Department of Resident Life. So yes, I look forward to answering your questions about roommates here today. Also, I will say, and I mean this sincerely, I cannot wait to be welcoming you to campus in person in August and be back together as a community. So we look forward to that as well. And I hope you all are staying healthy and safe. I'll turn it to Jeannie, who's going to introduce our awesome student ambassadors.
All right. Thank you, Ben. All right. So we have some of our student leaders here. Students, if you can introduce yourselves, the program that you are in, what leadership role that you're in as well, and we could take it from there, and then we'll move on with our next portion. All right. I'll start with Sierra since I see you first on my screen.
My name is Sierra. I use she, her pronouns. I was in Medes Health and Society. I am a rising senior, and in terms of, I guess, leadership, I currently work at UMPD as a security operations monitor, and I'm obviously a Scholars Ambassador as well.
Oh, and Sierra, one more thing. Could you add where you lived during your time in Scholars?
Okay, yeah, I lived in Cumberland Hall my freshman year. So in terms of like the Cambridge community, that's where I live.
Thank you, Sierra. Mary?
Hi, my name is Mary. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a rising sophomore in Justice and Legal Thought, and I was in Cumberland last year for my freshman year, and I guess some leadership positions. I'm a Scholars peer mentor, so I'll be like a peer mentor for some of the JLT people.
Thank you, Mary. Serena.
Hi, everyone. My name is Serena, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a rising senior, so I was also in the Life Sciences Scholars program my first 2 years. I was in Centerville both the years, and hopefully would have been even after that, but the pandemic happened. But my leadership experiences would be, I'm also a Scholars Ambassador, and I'm also the International Student Legislator at the student government body. So if there are any international students on this call who have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you.
And no, Jeannie, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So I want you all to get familiar with Sierra, Mary, and Serena. They will be sharing a little bit more about their experience living within our scholars community with you all very shortly. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Jeannie. We're going to pivot really quickly. Jess and I are going to briefly touch on some logistics about the actual roommate matching process. Who has questions about that, Jess? I don't know. Have we gotten any of those? So Jess reached out to you all and asked questions ahead of time. We have a sense of kind of where you're at, but as she said, please drop them in the chat, DM us, whatever. We want to make sure we capture your questions and answer them as much as we can. So the first thing I'm going to do is include a link to the Department of Resident Life website. So one important distinction to make is that Scholars is a living learning program, right? But we are also partnering with the Department of Resident Life. So when you are a student at the University of Maryland, you actually sign your housing contract with DRL, or Department of Resident Life. So sometimes when it gets confusing, people are like, well, why do I have to navigate this? Scholars told me this and Res Life told me that. So we want to apologize up front if you've had any kind of run-ins or challenges with that. That is probably part of the bureaucracy of wading through that. We want to do our best to help with that. So please reach out to us at any point and we will help with that. I'm going to put a link in here for the roommate process that Res Life has launched. And if you have already signed your housing contract, which I hope you have, you should have received a notification about the roommate finder process, which launched last week. I see some nodding. Thank you for that. And which there's a rather new online portal or tool called StarRes, where you can go in there and you can create your own profile, and you can then answer a series of prompts and responses, and then you'll be able to find different queries and matches that way. A couple of key things that we hear from Res Life here that I think would be helpful, Jess, right? One, I don't know about y'all, but like if you're familiar with Netflix, you know, you get the like 97% match, like, oh yeah, like that show is really good for you. Problem with roommate finders is not the same thing from what we understand from Res Life. Actually, a successful roommate match might be even in like the 50 or 60% range. Now you're thinking, okay, Ben, I'm not sure I buy that. The reason being is that because you're clicking on a host of different things on there, the prospects of finding the quote unquote elusive algorithmic match are going to go down with every single prompt that you respond, right? So actually what we find from the data is that a 60%-ish match is actually pretty successful. Jess, do you want to weigh in on that or add anything to that?
Sure. So a couple of other things just to add logistically from that perspective. Again, so that 60 to 70% is normal. You have a couple of options, and actually, Jonah, thank you for your question in the chat. This leads really nicely into the next point I was going to make, which is that is up to you. If you plan to go quote unquote random, you just fill out that survey where you talk about, and everyone answers this, your roommate profile questions, where you talk about your studying habits, your social habits, your sleep habits, your cleanliness habits. And by the way, piece of advice for all of you, I understand that maybe the temptation is there to answer really aspirationally, because I know when I went off to college, I was certain that that would transform me into a very neat and organized person. It did not. So it's okay. You can talk, be honest when you answer those questions. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give you. Answer those honestly. That questionnaire, thank you to someone who's asking, I believe that is also through that roommate finding site. But it may also have come up when you got your housing contract. So the people you want to email about that is reslife@umd.edu, reslife@umd.edu. So you have a couple of options for finding a roommate. You can, by using that questionnaire, you can do some filtering. You can say, you know what, of everything on here, I definitely don't want someone who smokes. I cannot live in a room with a smoker. You know, for health reasons, for personal reasons. Then you can start messaging people that come up. And they actually recommend, I know it feels awkward, embrace the awkward. Just start messaging people who come up who are matches. This is also how you will find out if someone is in Scholars, if they're in the same program as you, if they're in the same major as you. Someone else asked if freshmen can dorm alone. That is, again, something that you would want to contact Res Life about. The short answer to that question is there is a possibility. There can be reasons that Resident Life can work with you to get you a single. Typically, those are for students who require them for medical or different health exemptions, but reach out to them, reslife@umd.edu. And now Panav has asked the $1 million question. This is the most frequent question that we have gotten on the phone, over email. There are some of the names on this list that I am looking going, now you know what my face looks like, because I have talked with you a lot. I have emailed with you and talked with you. Can you room with someone not in Scholars, someone who is in another living learning program, someone who is in Scholars but not in your program? You're in BSE, they're in IS, you want to live together? The short answer is maybe. I know that's not the answer you want. You want the black and white. Resident Life has said you can request roommates from other programs, roommates that are not in Scholars, and they will make those determinations as space allows. They will do their best to accommodate these requests. However, a couple things to keep in mind. One, if a student is in a program that has a housing requirement, honor students, for example, Virtus and Flexus, I believe, Carillon, Global Communities, we have a lot of living learning programs on this campus. If they have a housing requirement, that ranks at the top. If someone is in BSE, for example, the first person on my list, Adelina, I see that you're in BSE. You are required to live in Cambridge Hall. They do not make exceptions for that. So the required housing, that is the thing that ranks at the top. DRL, Department of Resident Life, will look at the list and say, okay, who absolutely has to be in a specific building? Slot, 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 slot. Okay, who else is in Scholars? Pop them in. Okay, now we can start moving them around. It is not first come, first serve. The roommate matching process is open until June 16th. So it is okay to take your time. It is okay to really find someone, find someone that you feel like you can click with. But yes, Jonah, to answer your question, they will do their best to match you with a roommate from your program if you don't reach out to someone on Roommate Finder. So we're going to hear more from the students because their perspective is really what's valuable here, and they will be really helpful. But I want to say, and I know Ben and Jeannie can echo this, I understand that right now, after this past year and a half, really, with COVID, with the pandemic, with so much feeling really uncertain, it's really hard to feel like this isn't in your control, that there are all of these other factors. I promise you, I would not promise this if it wasn't true. However it works out, you're gonna find your people here at the University of Maryland and here in Scholars. We are gonna do our best to facilitate opportunities for that. I know hearing trust the process is frustrating. I know maybe right now that feels scary, but I promise you, trust the process. And we are going to do our best now. Some of you have asked us some really specific questions. So we're going to be DMing and getting back to a few of you. But I'm going to turn it back over to Jeannie to introduce our students and have them talk a little bit about their housing experiences.
Thanks, Jess. Okay, so I am going to ask each of our student panelists who are here today, Sierra, Mary, and Serena, to share a little bit about their roommate experiences during scholars or even beyond that for that fact, okay? So here are some of the prompts that we came up with. If either of you had a random roommate, if you could share what that experience was like for you, and maybe list some of the highlights of being assigned, you know, a roommate, someone that you really didn't have a say in selecting who that person would be, who had a matched roommate, right? How that all worked out, or if you had a say in all of that, if the match was perfect, with some learning experiences from there. Share some of your success stories, lessons, life lessons that you've learned. We're doing this so that you all could understand that there is definitely some value and some benefit to meeting somebody and rooming with them prior to knowing them, you know, not having known them prior to scholars, right? And we really want you to be open to this whole experience because it is an amazing experience once all is said and done. And so, and I'm going to turn it over first to Sierra to share her story, and then I'll move on with our other students.
Like I said, my freshman year, I lived in Cumberland Hall. I elected to go random assignment, and I was put in a triple with 2 girls. And it was an interesting experience because I am friends with one of those roommates right now. I'm not friends with the other one. It really just depends on like how you click. If you choose a random person, it's obviously going to be somebody you don't know. And so there's always that risk of like it being a roommate horror story or you guys not getting along. I do believe that you have the choice to reassign after a semester or something like that. I did not choose to do that because we got along fairly well. And then my sophomore year, I roomed with one of those girls, and that was completely fine. I lived in Worcester Hall my sophomore year, and my junior year, I currently live at Courtyards, and I chose to room with 2 of my friends and another random person. In the first scenario, in terms of my freshman year, when I chose random assignment, I did happen to like meet someone that I'm still friends with, and that was great. In this current situation that I am in, I chose random assignment for one of the people that I do live with, and we don't get along, unfortunately, but it's just all about like making the best of your situation, because you may not get along with that person, but it's important to be cordial and like just be considerate of other people's space and things like that. In terms of rooming with friends, it really depends on you as a person, because and your friendship as well, because visiting someone at their home and like staying with them for a night is very different from rooming with them and living with them and on a consistent basis, because I share a bathroom with a person, I share a kitchen, we share a laundry room, a living room. Well, in terms of dorms, you don't really have all that space, but it's a much smaller space, so you have to compromise a lot more. It's just very important to be considerate of other people's space and understand that, like, I believe it was, as was said before, be very honest about how you conduct yourself day to day. If you're a clean person, like you know that you're a clean person, but also being clean is also dependent on who you are, because one perspective of what is clean may not be another person's perspective of what is clean. So I think it's also important to be very honest about how you conduct yourself day to day. If you are a clean person, if you are up all hours of the night and your roommate goes to bed early, just be like a little considerate of the fact that they have to sleep or get up early, because my freshman year, I stay up really late to do my work. I'm a night owl. And my other roommate, she gets up at 6 a.m. So when sometimes I'd be going to bed after doing all my work, she'd be waking up to get ready for her day. So we were able to work it out where I never disturbed her. She never disturbed me when I was going to sleep or she was waking up. And living in a triple was also like a very kind of a small space. So we had to compromise in terms of putting our dressers in the closets and also like in terms of guests. Another thing is I think it's very, very important that you have a roommate agreement. In freshman dorms, I believe you do have to do that with your RA or something like that. I haven't done that in a couple of years, but I think it's really important to have a roommate agreement because yes, there may be like, you may think that there are like unspoken rules like, oh, I'm going to take out the trash on this day, they're going to take out the trash on this day or something like that. But if you have it written down and these are like expectations that you have set in the beginning, it's easier for you guys to follow that and create a kind of good atmosphere for everybody to live in.
Thank you so much, Sierra. All right, Mary, you could go ahead and share your story.
So I was a freshman last year, so my roommate experience is a little different because I obviously didn't have one because I lived in like a single, but I can talk about like my process because I did match. So I chose one and I found her through like the class of 2024 like Facebook page. And I was basically like just looking for somebody who like was in my same program and shared a lot of common things. And it was like the first person I found. And after about like a month of just like FaceTime each other like all of the time, I was like, okay, like this is gonna be my roommate. And she is like my best friend. And I guess the best part about like being in Scholars and Live and Learn is that like we're able to like grow as like through friendships based off our classes as well, because there's always something to talk about. And I'm going to be living with her next year as my roommate, and then with two other girls in my program that were on my floor in Cumberland this year. So we'll be in like a suite next year, actually like living together. But I was really able to find somebody who like we're very similar and we have like very similar work schedules and sleep schedules. So like for me, if like you're gonna match, the Facebook page was really helpful because people put like all of their interests and everything. And just like really like take time, I guess, to like talk to somebody and get to know them if like you're interested in like trying to match.
Thank you, Mary. Serena?
I completely agree with everything you both said. I think for me, I also went in random and I didn't know anybody else in Scholars who I could room with to begin with. But I feel like for me, considering when I came from India, I didn't know anyone else going to UMD. So living in Scholars or when you live with Scholars, you live with people who are interested in many of the same experiences as you and the program that you've been selected into. So that helps a lot because you already know that, okay, that person has the same interests. And at the same time, be completely honest in the form because you don't want someone waking up when you're going to sleep. And I think for me, I liked going random. I think it's better to do that than living with maybe your best friends as well, because I did it both ways. Once I went random and the other time I lived with my best friend. And I think in that it sometimes gets a little awkward to say certain things which you would have no problem saying to if you don't know the person very well. So um I think be a little careful of who in a way is going to who you'll be comfortable living with, but also it is also college. So sometimes I think it's good to learn to be adaptable as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Serena.